Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Star Trek Discovery Season 3 Episode 4, Forget Me Not. This video is part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Star Trek Discovery, so I'll have to start with a spoiler warning for Discovery up to Season 3 Episode 4. If you haven't seen up to this point, you will not want to watch this video, otherwise some things will be spoiled for you. So, this is a good episode. I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. There's some things that I really liked and latched onto and thought, ooh, this is kind of better than what Discovery usually does, and it makes me very hopeful for the future. But there's other things that kind of bothered me that I didn't really think worked. But before I get into all that, I want to talk about my feelings on the season overall so far, because we're only 4 episodes deep, but even so, I'm having a feeling that this season is going to be better than the previous season, not just because of the setting or the story, but the main thing is I think they're handling the pacing better and the mysteries, because every season of Discovery has a mystery. Like season 1 was kind of like, what's the deal with Ash, Tyler, and Lorca, and season 2 is what's the deal, who's the Red Angel, what's the deal with the Red Angel, and where is Spock, and stuff like that, who's Control. And this mystery this season is mainly like, what's the deal with the burn? What's the burn? What's that all about? Why did it happen? What happened to the Federation? Where are the Federation? Where'd they go? What's going on? And all that sort of thing. And so I think that's an more interesting mystery. And because I gotta be honest, in season 2, I didn't really care all that much about the Red Angel. I mean, I felt like I only cared because I was told to care. Like, they kept telling me in every episode, ooh, what's this Red Angel? We're here. They don't need to, like, reinforce it. They don't need to reinforce and tease the burn. I'm already intrigued. Like, what the hell is the deal with the burn? What happened to the Federation? I think that it's a better mystery, and I think they're doing a better job at unfolding it and telling it. And plus, I think, like, the pacing is definitely something noticeable, because in season 2, they took like 7 or 8 episodes just to fucking find Spock. And when they did finally find Spock, it was kind of uneventful. It's like, oh yeah, there's Spock. And so it's, in retrospect, it seemed completely unnecessary for them to take so fucking long to find Spock. It seemed like the only reason they did that is so they could drag the story out over the 13 episode season. Whereas here, they don't waste their time. They're like, ooh, we got this message from this admiral who's on Earth, so let's go to Earth. Boom, they're on Earth. And then they go to Earth. They didn't find what they're looking for, but they found this woman who has a Trill, but she can't remember the answer, so they need to go to Trill. So boom, they go to Trill. And just slight spoilers for the preview for next week's episode, but it's actually not a spoiler because the preview is part of this episode. It airs in the episode. Is not a fucking spoiler. But anyway, I'm sorry. I go on a rant on this. But anyway, for the preview for next week's episode, we see that, they got the coordinates for the Federation. So boom, they go to where the Federation is now. And I love that. I mean, it's just, they have a spore drive, so it makes sense story-wise. But it also is, I mean, they could find a way to drag this off if they wanted to. I mean, they had the spore drive in season 2, and yet it still took them 8 episodes to find fucking Spock. But I love how they're not. And I think it's better pacing. Now, there is a risk of blowing through the storyline too fast, which is something that the show 24, if you ever watch that show, they always did that every season. Like, they'd have the storyline and it'd move at such a fast pace where 2/3 of the way through the season, they've already expended that storyline. So the last 6 episodes seemed kind of tacked on or kind of just like a waste. And it was like, okay, story's over. I don't really care about it anymore. And they found like they had to add extra stuff to do. Oh my God, we still have 6 episodes left. I always used to joke that show would have been better if it was called 12. But anyway, so there's a danger of doing that, but I don't think that's going to happen here so far. I mean, we're only 4 episodes in, so I could be wrong, but it does seem to me that they do have a plan that's going to last all 13 episodes, but they're not dicking around and putting basically filler in and wasting time to get there, and I like it. So far, so good. Now, as far as this episode, how this episode goes in particular, I have a feeling that some people who watch my reviews of the first 2 episodes this season, who are familiar with my channel, might expect me to like trash this episode for being too melodramatic. But in fact, I'm not going to. I actually liked how it dealt with the emotional state of the characters. In fact, I think that's exactly what was needed, because you have these fast-moving storylines where, you know, they go 1,000 years in the future and they find the Federation's gone, and Burnham has to fend for herself for a year, and they hook up again, but then they're under attack, and they go to Earth and they deal with this other attack and blah blah blah. I think when you have something like that, especially such a change in the status quo as far as this character's lives gone, that they were, you know, in the 23rd century, now they had to deal with an entirely different, like, new state of mind. I think you definitely need to take a breath and explore how this affects their psyche, how this affects their character, what exactly effect this has had on them. Otherwise, because if you just throw too much plot out without having the character background and taking a breath to explore the characters and how this affects them, then the story's going to suck. It's just plot. Like, for example, Game of Thrones Season 8. Sorry. Any chance I have to take a shot at that piece of shit. But anyway, it's just plot with no sort of grounding or character development, then it's not good. So I think you definitely need an episode like this to take a breath and explore the characters and how it affects them. Now, with that being said, I think perhaps they could have done a wee bit of a better job doing this, but I was satisfied with it for the most part. One thing that kind of irked me was the no one even mentions the possibility of traveling back to their own time period. It's like everyone has completely erased that from their minds. Now, hear me out, because I can hear everyone going, "Whoa, they already explained this." But no, hear me out. Because, granted, I know they're not going to. And I know that there's reasons in universe why they're not going to, because, you know, they did the whole Judge from The Simpsons things. I declare the events of this episode never happened. Which is dumb. They didn't really need to do that. It was so contrived. But they did it. So I understand that in their minds, they knew when they were going to the future, it was going to be a one-way trip. And they knew that if they go back, that sort of would change everything, and they know intellectually that they can't go back. Now, some other people might be saying, well, time travel's banned in this time period. Don't you remember that excuse they gave in episode 1? They have no means to travel back in time. And if I'm going to put on my big Star Trek nerd glasses here, and this is probably a mistake of the franchise established that any ship at any point in time can travel back in time by slingshotting around the sun. Thanks so much, Star Trek 4. And you might do, it's not Star Trek 4, it's Tomorrow's Yesterday. Tomorrow's Yesterday was an accident. Star Trek 4 established that they could purposely do it. They could intentionally just slingshot around the sun and time travel back to whatever time period they want to. That was firmly established in Star Trek 4. Now that's nerd glasses on. You could take it off and be like, well, that is a bit too convenient, because that makes it, they have an instant do-over device for anything. So if there's any tragedy, they could just travel back to the sun. But really, there's other ways. Even if you forget about that, surely some of the crew members, I think, might be thinking there must be some way to get back to our own time period. It's like Voyager, for example. Voyager, they're Delta Quadrant. They have absolutely no practical way to get back to the Alpha Quadrant. It would take them 70 years. Most people wouldn't be alive by the time they got home, and it would take them forever. Yet they still tried. It was an impossible task. Like, they had no possible way to do it. Yet they still tried to get home. So I'm kind of think it's unrealistic that no one even brings up the possibility. Now, I don't think they should try to do it. I don't think they should be like, the whole Sir's task, we need to find the way to get home, the way Janeway was with Voyager. I get it. I know why they're not doing that. That makes total sense, and I'm totally with it. But I don't buy that none of the random crew members even brings it up as a possibility. Even like, hey, why don't we actually try to fucking get home because I miss my family. I'm away from my family. This is bullshit. I know I signed up for this, but we don't have to be here. Why don't we just travel back in time and make sure the burn never happens? Now, obviously I don't want them to do that, but I think they should have addressed it. I think they should have had Saru be like, well, we can't do that because of this and this and that. But I just don't buy, like, I buy that everyone will be traumatized like the way they are and freaked out, but I don't buy that no one even brings this up. I don't know. This is just me. That's just the personal thing. I find it unrealistic. No one's even talking about going home, that they already instantly accepted they're never going to get home. Did the Voyager crew instantly accept that? No, they did not. But anyway, I know the situation's different, but still, there should be that tinge. There should be at least that discussion, at the very least. But, whatever. Move past that. I did like that, I liked how Saru acknowledged that the crew was something was wrong with them, and they're going through some shit. I liked that dinner scene. Where they all bickered and fight, where Saru's trying to at first, form a connection with the crew. I like that. As soon as the computer told Saru, oh, you should have a dinner for the senior officers, it made me think of Enterprise, where they always mock Enterprise for this, where they're like snobbery, where Archer has this like cool clique with just the T'Pol and Trip, and sometimes he'll invite Phlox or Reed if he's feeling very generous, but he has like his cool clique where they get to eat in luxury while all the scum have to sit down and slop up the bullshit while the high-up pristine aristocracy gets to eat in a lap of... No, I'm sorry. Now I'm getting distracted. But anyway, that's what that reminded me of as soon as they said that. But I didn't get that same vibe of the aristocracy, the cool kids club that I did with Enterprise. Because... First, it wasn't just like 2 or 3 people. It was like the entire senior staff, including like Linus is on the senior staff since when? I didn't know about that. And that one random woman who was the actress who played Ariam, I don't even know her character's name. She's in the senior staff apparently. All right, sure. Whatever. And how come Jet Reno wasn't there? I guess I didn't know because the actress wasn't available to do the show. But why did they have like Linus and that random woman there, but not Jet Reno? But no, I don't know. You could argue, she's not even from the ship, but she's effectively part of the senior staff. But regardless of any of that, I like that they had all the people there, and it did feel like they were trying to connect as a family. And the way that Saru was like reaching out to them and reminding them and having them say "I" again and all that, and that was good. And I think Saru did a solid job in that. Here now, those who are familiar with my channel know that I absolutely trashed Saru's command abilities in season 1, particularly when I thought in the episode was the Choose Your Pain, when he took over for Lorca and he like violated all sorts of Federation principles and it was just being an idiot and douchebag and didn't know how to fucking command. I actually named him the worst first officer in the Star Trek franchise because of that. But he's come a long way. Or should I say the writers are actually writing him better now. Whichever way you want to look at it. Because here he is coming off as a strong commander. As a good commander. And I like the scenes too where he was saying, oh, Pike made it seem effortless. But Pike had more experience than him and he was like, the best of the best kind of thing. And Saru's kind of just starting out as the captain. So that makes sense. But he did a good job. Regardless, even though it wasn't effortless. So I love that. I love the way they addressed it and everything, and it all worked. The only slight issue I had is I love the concept of Detmer having that PTSD. And this is something that, of course, they hinted at in previous episodes. Other people had theories, oh, what's up with Detmer? And I thought, oh, she's just having PTSD. And it turns out that's the case. And I like that. I think that's fine. That's good. I like it. So I like the concept of her having PTSD and the concept of her and Stamets bickering and Stamets having his own sort of issues and them coming to the head because they're all sort of on edge. The concept is great and makes total sense. The execution, on the other hand, I think it could have been done. I think that it could have been done better. I think that the specific dialogue in that scene, it didn't resonate to me. It didn't really hit. It didn't really feel realistic the way Detmer was talking about. Well, you just sit in your spore drive thing, and I fucking had to crash the ship and blah blah blah. And Stamets like blah blah blah. And at first she was talking about Stamets' blood, like she started like, oh, Stamets' blood is everywhere, and everyone's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, I know what they were going for, and again, the concept is great that she has a mental breakdown at dinner, and it leads to an argument, and they bicker with each other, and they're like, that's great. I love the concept of it, but the specific dialogue and the specific execution of it didn't seem realistic. It seemed like they needed to get more into exactly what was bothering Detmer, and so their inability to do it just illustrated to me more and drove home to me more the fact that Detmer is not a fully fleshed out character. Now, granted, they are trying to flesh out by doing stuff like this, but I think they need to try harder. I think it's just because the fact that her trauma didn't seem real, and it didn't seem like the specific reasons for her being upset, I didn't really resonate or really feel like realistic. Like, I think they could have delved deeper into why really she was traumatized, other than, oh, I had to crash the ship. I mean, again, simple. I'd never see my family again. They should have addressed that. They should have got deeper into that. Oh, we're 1,000 years in the future and the Federation's gone. Everything's fucked. We're in a fucking hellscape hellhole. Like, they need to... And some people might say, well, that's implied, Mark. They don't need to spell it out for you. But no, I think they do. I think they need, because at the moment, it doesn't feel like that shit's connecting. Like she's talking about freaking out and flying into the future and crashing the ship. But it would have felt more personal if she got into more personal details about her personal life and why this is affecting her, why being in this hellscape is affecting her so much, why leaving her family behind is affecting her. Like, these should not be unspoken. These should be explored. These do not go without saying. This would help flesh out the character more and make this scene more believable. So in concept, I love this scene. In execution, I think it was a bit underdeveloped. That's just my opinion. So, but another interesting thing I want to get about talking about Saru and his talking to the computer is that they're really starting to tie this into the short trek Calippo, I think it was called. I'm pronouncing it wrong, but you know the one I'm talking about, the one with the Discovery's like a living AI is controlling Discovery. I think you actually start to hear that voice in that scene where they showed like a picture of that sphere thing. It tells you that specifically that the sphere data is merging with the Discovery library and the Discovery computer and creating an intelligence, an artificial intelligence. And that's clearly, in fact, I think pretty sure they got the same voice actor, the same intelligence that is controlling Discovery in that short trek. And I gotta be honest with you, I had written that short trek off. I thought that they had just changed direction after they made it and like, we're not going to do that anymore. And it was kind of going to be a foiler. It was going to be something that they never actually connected up to. But now it seems like they are making an effort to connect up to it. Although in that episode, they said that Discovery had been there for 1,000 years, not that it time traveled to the future. So it might not be flawless, but it does seem like they are finding a way to connect up to it, and that would be really interesting. And it does make me wonder if they had this in mind the entire time, because you got to remember that short trek came out before season 2 came out, and they're just now starting to build up to it in season 3. So did they have this in mind the whole time? I think it's more likely they had this vague concept. They knew they'd be going to the 30th century in season 3. And so they throughout this vague concept that built into that, and now they're trying to sort of work it in and build up to it, and that's why some things are going to be a bit out of place because they hadn't planned precisely for it. That's just my thinking on it. That's my theory. But it does look like they are going to try to build up to it and not just brush it under the rug, which would be interesting. So I found that interesting. And I like the concept of course, is obviously Saru noticed that something was up with the computer, and he theorized that hey, this the sphere data is merging with it, and so they're going to explore that more. So I'm really, really fascinated to see how. To see them getting to that, because I talked about the sphere data before and how that could be used as too much of a crutch to solve every single issue. So, but by having it form as AI makes it a bit more interesting. And I love the continuity there, that they are making that sphere data a major plot point, not just brushing that under the rug. So that's great too. So let me get into the storyline with Burnham and Adira. Now, I love this fact that this is a Trill-based episode, and they go on the Trill, and it's all about the Trill. Because this is something like Discovery would not really touch on, like Deep Space Nine or Next Generation things, because it was in the original series time period. I mean, there was a few Next Gen references, but it really is a century before. But here we're like 900 years after. So they're touching more on Deep Space Nine things, and I love exploring the Trill, who's an established race, mainly established on Deep Space Nine. So the whole thing about the Guardians and those little pools with the symbionts swimming in, that was all explored in Deep Space Nine. And apparently a lot of people hated the Trill episodes on Deep Space Nine. I didn't mind them. They're not my favorite, but I didn't mind them. I don't think they were bad or anything. They were fine, whatever. But the Trill were never a favorite species of mine. But it's still, I love the fact that they're exploring it. And what's funny to me is when they were going to have Dr. Culber escort Adira down. By the way, I love all the scenes with Dr. Culber and the way he's like reading people and counseling people. I thought that was done really well too. But even if it is kind of inconsistent with the douchebag he was in season 2, but I like the dynamic. But anyway, it was interesting. They were going to have him go down with Adira, and he was like, "No, Burnham, I think you should go. You're the good choice." Be perfectly honest, like Burnham should have been the first choice altogether, because Culber even points out, well, there's no medical reason for me to be there. So why are you sending your doctor? Like, you should send a diplomat. If not Burnham, then Saru, or not Georgiou, she's not a good diplomat, but someone with diplomacy skills, not fucking a doctor. Because it's clear, because it seems like they get the Trill, and the Trill like, "Oh, we're friends, we're glad to see you." And Saru's like, "Oh, okay, everything's fine now. Go down, stand down from Yellow Alert, lower the shields. We're all friends now. Let's just hang out." Like, no, you just had one conversation with them. You still need some, like a diplomat or some diplomacy. So it just so happened that Burnham happened to be the right person to go, just because Culber casually suggested. But they should have been having at least, I thought they would send a whole fucking away team down, but of course the plot required it just to be Burnham. So that's why they do it. And it's a very stereotypical plot device in Star Trek, where you have like a contact situation, not first contact obviously, because the Trill been around forever, but it's been centuries since they've had contact with the Federation. And so it's a typical trope in Star Trek where you have a contact with diplomacy or whatever with an alien culture. You have the leader who's kind of in the middle, and then you have one of the visors who's a total dickhead who's like, "Fuck the Federation, fuck these Starfleet guys, fuck them, let's kill them, let's get rid of them." And you have another advisor who's like, "No, let's help the Starfleet guys, let's listen to the Starfleet guys." And the leader's in the middle going, what should I do? Should I? And kind of going between these two. That's been, I'm thinking, a lot of the episode First Contact from Star Trek, which is a prime example for that. But there's other situations, other Star Trek episodes. It seems like that's been done a lot, so that was a bit tropey. But to be clear, I I'm saying this as a positive, not as a negative, because it makes it feel like Star Trek. It makes it feel more like I'm watching a Star Trek episode, even though they are relying a bit over the trope. But it's not too much of a trope. It's not like, oh, the holodeck's trying to kill you kind of trope. So it's not too like, oh, too much of a crutch or too much of a, bad writing situation. But it's more, I mean, it is a tinge, but just enough for it to not be annoying, to actually be kind of nostalgia and kind of refreshing. That it's, oh yeah, it's kind of just hammering it down, making you know internally, instinctively, that this is a Star Trek episode you're watching. So I kind of like that, if I'm going to be honest. Even though I did feel at the same time, part of me is like, oh, that's so tropey. That's so typical to have the one advisor being like, oh, I'll help you, and the other advisor is like, no, let's kill him. But anyway, so anyway, I think having Burnham going after Adira during her like quest where she's like, in her Trill thing, it's really inconsistent, and that did seem kind of a forced way to make Burnham the center of attention of every fucking episode, so I kind of didn't like that, and she didn't seem completely necessary. Sure, she was there to talk Adira, oh, you gotta do it, but that seemed like contrived stakes to me. It would have been better to me if Burnham wasn't involved in that, and it was just an Adira thing, and she always has to be the center of fucking attention in every episode. But anyway, and it doesn't make any sense. Like, how did she get in her vision quest? But whatever. And then, alright, so now this is where I'm going to be a little bit of a canon hawk. So, they find out that the Trill can join with human, and all the Trill are like, oh, this is such a great thing. Now, first of all, they said that their society is falling apart because they don't have any viable hosts. Alright, now I got several things to say about this. First of all, it's been established in the episode Deep Space Nine episode Equilibrium that any Trill can be a host to a symbiont. The commission was lying to the people to make them think that only specific people were eligible to be a host. But you could counter that by saying in that episode that was never revealed to the public, and that Sisko and Jadzia made a deal with the Trill that they keep their secret so that they could save Jadzia's life, which was their only goal. So you could say 1,000 years later they had they never knew that secret got buried, and they don't actually know that any Trill could be a host. But here they sort of reveal, oh, humans can be hosts, so they seem to be a non-Trill can be host. And all the Trill are just okay with this. Okay, cool, we'll just have the symbionts go off and merge with other random aliens. That seems like they would be very upset by that and would actually like kill Burnham and Adira to hide that fact, because then the symbionts would become a commodity, especially in this like landscape of like Mad Max type future that this is, that they become sought after, a commodity that people want to steal and purchase and sell to the highest bidder sort of thing. So that doesn't strike me as a particularly good thing. And it would have made more sense to me if they had like made it clear to the Trill, like made it clear that, hey, the Trill are under the false impression that they don't have any hosts, but then they reveal that actually anyone can be a host, any Trill. And that's what they should have gotten out of it. But they're like, oh yeah, we'll just go off and share our symbionts with humans and other species, which that kind of seems really inconsistent with canon. So I know Riker merged briefly, but that was like killing him to do it just for like a couple of days. Now, granted, again, future technology and whatnot, but it seems like it still shouldn't be as easy as it was for Adira to get to the sim. At the very least, they could say that she's special, not just anyone could do it. I don't know. That ending seemed kind of the way the Trill were, oh, we're okay with this, and it seemed kind of a bit fake. Just a little bit. Now, like, I don't have that big of an issue with it, but still, I don't know. Anyway, my rating for Forget Me Not out of 10, I'm going to give this an 8. Extremely good. Kind of repeating myself 3 times in a row. But this didn't quite breach 9ness to me because of, as I said, the issues I had with it. But I think its heart was in the right place. And in fact, I think they did a really good job of not being melodramatic, of actually exploring character stories. Even some of the execution was a bit off. I think the concepts are solid, and the idea behind it was solid. And I love seeing the trill and all that, and I think exploring more of this landscape, like, it did a good job, and they're setting up for future story. As I said, seems like this story of this season is coming together nicely. I think they're doing very well in terms of pacing and whatnot. But again, we're only 4 episodes in, but we'll see where it goes. So that's it for my review of Forget Me Not. I shall return next week to cover future episodes of Star Trek Discovery, so be sure to check that out. Also, check out my channel as I cover many more shows, like all the other Star Trek shows, BoJack Horseman, Breaking Bad, The Expanse, and more. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.